We're live.
Okay.
We're live.
All right, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Finance and Auxiliary Services Committee. It is Monday, August 14th at 5:33 p.m. And I'd like to just make note that there is a possibility that a quorum of the full membership of the Board of Education may be in attendance at committee meetings. There will be no full board action taken at any committee meeting. Only members of the committee may vote on any item on the agenda. A live broadcast will be streamed on the school district YouTube page. You can view the recording on the SDMF YouTube site. All right, so first item is indication of proper posting. Was the meeting properly posted?
It was.
Okay, great. Item 2, action item
Oh, I can't.
Never mind. I'll
A,
just follow along on the screen.
and really the only item for tonight's meeting, the 2023-24 School Resources Officers discussion. And I'll turn it over to Caitlin.
All right.
Yeah,
Swing it,
Yeah,
please.
I'll just take it. So I've been working quite a bit with the police department, multiple meetings, some very long meetings, some very healthy meetings. Long and short of it is the chief and I are of the same mind about shifting some dollars in the use of Fund 80. And in doing this, we, like you can see in the breakdown right here, we do create some opportunities in Fund 10 by using the community service levy. The question is, why increase the community service levy? And the reason is with police officers that we would increase the 3 resource officers, which I think is the minimum for this district this size. But the second thing is with resource officers currently not being funded out of Fund 80, if there's an incident that happens in the larger community, we want the kind of flexibility that Fund 80 allows. Meaning the community service fund is saying, this has nothing to do with the school, there's gonna be some opportunity for the police to be involved outside of the school walls during the school day, there's that possibility exists. And this is just acknowledging that in a financial way. And it's pretty common, it's very common actually, for Fund 80 to be used for school resource officers. And talking to the chief, this is increasing to 3 officers is not something that happens on day one, because people have to be trained and hired. It's a process that would take, anywhere 3 to 6 months-ish, something like that. Because it has to be the right sort of person. Meaning, we have some great school resource officers. I had a long meeting with all 3 of them. And we're having another one yet, I think it's this week, maybe early part of next week. Gotta check my calendar with that. Just to have a further follow-up about school safety and the school safety protocols. So some of the changes that are running into place is I'm gonna take aspects of school safety that deal with some of the more difficult things that we have to consider in school safety, while we're still gonna have, Caitlin and Chris and Troy working on the safety committee. I'm gonna kind of quarterback the if there's gonna possibly be remote evacuation or some tough and terrible things that could happen. We don't want those sorts of things to happen, but we need to drill and be prepared for them. So those are sorts of things that I'm just gonna take myself in terms of that responsibility. So all the admin know that, we kind of talked about that today, about that transition.
Is that a shift?
It is a shift.
Who had it before?
Usually people services, special ed. It's something that I have a lot of experience in. I feel more comfortable, not taking anything off Caitlin with insurance. There's aspects of safety that have to do with, the things that you're traditionally dealing with in school
Right.
safety. Meaning slips and falls.
Yep.
Really those sorts of things are where we see some of the bigger issues, or ladders not being properly stored. That sounds funny, but it happens. There's a lot of that happens with that. So, with Chris and Caitlin, and with Troy's assist, you can see some changes on our website already with school safety. If you go to the about function, there's a school safety drop down.
I'll go there.
Yeah. That we've added to all the schools. Yeah, hit any school, there you go.
Oh, is this not the one you're looking for?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. But you'll see them in all the schools.
So these are all drop downs with a bunch of information.
Just as, and this is sort of the starting point. We have more work to do. But school safety, I believe it needs to be our number one focus, then learning right after that. Because if our staff and our students are feeling safe in our schools, then certainly they can learn at a higher level. So that's what I see in terms of just jumping back. This is a solid funding plan into the future, and I have talked to the chief, he's fully supportive with the understanding that he wanted me to say that it's not a day one piece, it's a piece that, you know, with training and that if it's approved by the school board, that they're ready to continue to be our very good partners, so. Questions?
So this starts with the budget that
This
we're
budget that
This
we're
that
moving,
we're
yes.
moving, yeah,
So
okay.
it'll kind of be two different components
Yeah.
in tonight's meeting. So the first, so we'll have this discussion now, then we have this discussion as a discussion item in the board meeting, and then we're taking action on this piece and the budget. So this piece will be moving to fund 3 full-time school resource officers, and then the funding plan is built into the budget. So the approval that the board would take action on in terms of school resource officers will kind of happen in 2 parts. And the moving to 3 school resource officers is one action item. And then using Fund 80 as part of a funding strategy is built into the budget that will be approved in a separate action item.
Fund 80 is.
It's community
Community service fund.
Okay.
Thank you for reminding us to use words because I always
Yes.
just speak in
Yeah, but
funds.
Fund 80 is the community service fund, it's a separate levy, part of the overall levy. So we have one levy, if you will, but when you levy to 80, you're telling the community, this has nothing to do with students or teacher pay or, you know,
Mhm.
most of the money in 80 is CE and rec. It's community ed and rec, which we're not suggesting any change to that, because that's a model amazing program. But there are usually other things in community in Fund 80. You know, Fund 80 is that part, if you look around to other districts, you know, if you're going to be funding things, you're being upfront with the community and saying, this has nothing to do with students or teacher pay or books, this is over here. And that's where that connection with the police is important, because their chain of command does not run through the district.
So in the past, does that mean that the officers that were stationed in our school never did anything outside of the school walls?
Well,
Or
I'm not saying that, you know, that's not for me to go back and
Okay, fair.
to say that, but what I am saying is it's more correctly done in Fund 80. That is what I'm trying to say. It's more correctly placed, at least partially, in Fund 80. Some people do put all of it into 80, right? That is not unheard of in my experience. But we're not even suggesting that. We're suggesting that this is the minimum that we should do. There could be more put into 80, largely because their chain of command doesn't run through me. None of those police officers report to me in any way, shape, or form, nor should they. It's a very important separation of duties, if something is gonna go wrong.
And then we do have 3 officers, but I understand it must be like a 2.5 FTE, so I don't know if all of them are like partial employee or partially working here and then they're all doing something else, or like are we actually gonna, I know you talk about training, are we actually gonna, we or the police department, are they gonna have to actually hire someone new, or is it just gonna be these 3 officers that we already have that can just serve full time?
That's also a great question. And that's up to the chief, but I'll be more specific with that. Right now, technically, it's 2.5, but it's probably 2.5 because of all the overtime, right? So on the books, it's 2, but there's a lot of overtime. Tens of thousands, lots of overtime. To the point where the chief's response, which it should be, if the school district asks for help, he's going to provide it. Which, it's awesome, but we're gonna pay overtime. So effectively, it's like 2.5 from how it looks with money. So when I was having great conversations with the chief, since I started, I think I met him first day, second day, And another time with all the resource officers, it like just makes more sense to come at this a different way. Meaning, you know, it's 2, but it's really 2.5 because we're spending so much on overtime. Just go to 3, and he said correctly, we still have to watch our overtime. Because we're the ones doing that to ourselves. He's not, you know, he's only responding to ask, you know, calls for service. Great guy, the chief's wonderful. So to be more, I believe that this is a way to establish and to create more consistency, especially for the elementary schools. You know, because we have a solid person at the middle school and at the high school. We do have an additional officer who's the DARE officer. And I met with them, they talked me through DARE, but it's gonna allow a little bit more continuity with the elementary schools, which is critical. So we've had other talks, the school resource officers, the chief, the captains, and I, about where we wanna take school security, but this is the starting point. There's others, because they're gonna continue the onboarding with our current plan and safety plan if things go south, that kind of thing. And we're gonna refine it a little bit with them. So it's been a great start with the police department, they're wonderful, wonderful department.
With the 3 resource officers, do you think they'll be able to control the overtime by having that a third full-time?
Yeah, I really think that comes to us, that, and I'm gonna use the word discipline, that discipline comes from us, that, I'll give you an example. That when I was, I'm not gonna, okay, I'll just give an example. If there's a game, football game, and it's between our bitterest rival, whatever, you know, and when I was a high school principal, it's like, well, it was in Menominee with an I, and it was any time that we played Hudson, you know? We would have to have additional officers because someone was gonna
Something's
fight.
go down.
Yeah, whatever, and you just had to be ready for it, or Stevens Point. Anytime they came up to play hockey, there was gonna be a fight, so you might as well just have the police there. But it's more looking at that and planning that out. And you could plan that out with the existing officers, I mean, that's a conversation we could have. But that has less to do with the police, I just wanna be very clear about that, that doesn't have to do with the police, that has to do with us.
Right.
And our needs.
So proactive versus reactive, because obviously we can't control the reactive, but
Right.
if we can put potentially better processes in place and better, I don't know, escalation, hopefully we can limit the amount of
Yeah.
escalative reactive situations.
Like you're gonna want officers there for graduation usually.
Yep.
Just because there's large numbers and, you know, things just happen in graduation. But there's other times, there might be not as much of a need, like at dances. You know, Mr. Board and I, we haven't talked about it yet, but we'll see. You know, I'm not sure where they're at, how big the dances are here, or, you know, homecoming dances when I was a principal, I mean, that's a lot of kids. You know, 1,000 kids.
It might be the middle school dances that.
Oh, is that what it is here?
The last one, everybody
Okay.
exited, went to the park, there was a little kerfuffle, but.
Oh, I
So-
think I heard about that.
For Fund 80 specifically,
Yes.
how much are we currently levying versus is funded by program revenue? Are we levying money for Fund
Okay,
80
so-
right now?
So we currently levy
It's a good question.
before SROs, our projected budget was $900,000 for Fund 80.
Mhm.
So with this math now, basically let me just go through this and then I'll
Yeah,
get into
go.
the Fund 80 levy. So the estimated cost for our 3 full-time SROs in 23-24 is just shy of $240,000. So that previously was, we had $160,000 budgeted in just Fund 10. So now we take the 238 divided by 2, and half the cost goes to Fund 10, half the cost goes to Fund 80. This entire Fund 80 piece increases the Fund 80 levy. So in the budget packet, you'll see when we get to that piece, not in the committee meeting, but at, tonight in the board meeting, the levy, the Fund 80 levy went from 900,000 to 1.019. So we took 900,000, added $119,300. So the new Fund 80 levy in tonight's meeting is $1,019,300.
So how much is program revenue in Fund 80? I mean, they're like our only arm that like really brings in revenue, so what's the revenue?
2/3-ish, I can get you the exact number.
Yeah, it's 2.3 million-ish
Yes.
minus 900,000. So it's 1
1.58
Yeah.
million
there we go.
is program revenue.
I was gonna say 1.4, it's off by a little, but 40,700, this number here, we're creating $40,700 of contingency in 10, which we're not gonna spend, we're gonna leave it in contingency, so we've allotted for that, so we're creating room in 10 to the tune of $40,700.
And then have we asked or talked with Jason at all about increasing program revenue instead of levying?
No,
Well, I mean, we've talked through for SROs,
no, I think
just,
you
I mean,
meant-
yeah, it could be for SROs,
Like
but
whatever
in
your
general,
expenses are
yeah.
coming out of that.
Increasing fees.
I would say that's always a conversation, especially when we get through budget time, but to increase by the amount $900,000, we haven't, I mean, I guess I should say, maybe Jason's, I haven't done the math of like, what does that mean per registration? So to get into that level of detail, I would say, maybe, I haven't done it, but we absolutely can, to see what that, like, just what it would look like play out that scenario of,
It's a good question.
change. If in the hypothetical scenario where you just had no Fund 80 levy, but had all via program fees, we can
Right.
play that out, see what it would look like.
it's just a question.
And the bigger landscape, and I'll have this in my superintendent notes in the regular board meeting, is that there's $800,000 of additional dollars that exists. And I know there was conversation about that in ESSER funding, of underspent ESSER. Now, that's not related to SROs at all, but that's a bigger picture. We're also gonna use some of that to not spend money on technology out of the 10 and spend it out of this underspent federal money. So that helps us as well. So those are big developments since our last meeting, and very positive developments, which also allows us to continue moving forward with the ELA, looking at books and curriculum resources in ELA, but also social studies.
Mhm.
And those are big, there's gonna be some big tickets there, but as long as we're disciplined, which we will be, with that remaining ESSER money, there's a good chunk of money there to handle that now.
And the great news on that piece is like, that's what ESSER should be for, like those
Yes.
large one-time purchases, like,
Yes,
that's ideal,
yes.
so, that's great.
So that's future work, but important work, because those resources, it needs to be spent by June of 2024.
Mhm.
So by the end of June of 24, we have to have it spent and the resources here.
Right.
Like they have to be actually in the district, so we have some work to do in that regard, but that's kind of crossover, it's finance, it's definitely here. It's definitely money work, but it's definitely related to curriculum, like ELA and social studies, and I did tell the administrators today about that. I mean, these are some positive things. We just need to stay disciplined about it, finish our work, and then see how much is left in ESSER once we're done with that work, because there might be.
And I just wanna know, while we're talking, when we get to the budget piece, again, not in this meeting, but in the full one, this is not updated yet for reflecting of those new ESSER dollars. That will be in October when we get to, like, it happened at the end of last week, so like, this is already done basically at that point, so. That will be in September, October, when we finish our budget conversations and have our final budget approved.
Yep.
That those in-depth kind of breakdowns of ESSER will be there. So this ESSER, and when we get to our budget in the actual board meeting tonight, doesn't look any different than it did on the 24th.
You're good.
Big fingers, that's what I try to do. One of the big things to keep in mind about the moves we're making here, or that we're recommending that the board make, is that 775 to 712. That the mill rate, the tax, all in was 775 last year, correct?
Correct.
775,
Yep.
and it's projecting, meaning, I think the word is jello,
That's my word.
that's your word. Because it's not locked in until later, but 712. So in other words, a decreasing tax rate, we're getting more for less, just based on how we're recommending it, big picture. Alright? So let me find Sorry about that. Question.
And I'm guessing you haven't projected the levy 2 years out yet.
Levy 2 years out?
Yeah, like if you're talking 775 to 712 this year, if you look 2
Okay,
years out.
so I don't have that I have it, yes,
Yep.
but not off the top of my head.
Yep.
But what I can say, in terms of future years, is it was like a continual decrease for a few more, like the 5 years, and then it studied at a low number. It was like upper fives. That's very low in the state of Wisconsin. However, with the new budget, 402-year budget that Governor Evers just approved for the 325 increase per people, not included in that budget was an increase in aid for that many years. So when we look at future years beyond 24, 25, beyond the second year of the state biennial budget, the mill rates no longer go down. Instead, they go up. But we have no idea what's going to happen in future with aid in future years.
Right.
In recent years, like the legislators have put additional aid in, which is helping mill rates across the state of Wisconsin go down. So it's very possible that just because the governor approved additional per pupil dollars but didn't include any additional in the aid bucket, it's very possible that future legislators do that, but right now they are projected in future years to go back up.
Right, well, yeah, and obviously with the most recent legislation, there's a cap on what we can levy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we have to be aware of that if the levy comes too low and then we need to bring it up. So that's partially why I'm asking the question of 2 years out. And then have you done the projections on the new charter school numbers? The increase that we're gonna have to pass through there?
So, yes, our budget. After this meeting, I'll get it for you so I can speak to it at a board meeting
That's fine.
about what it includes. We do have a projected increase in the charter school enrollment, and that's included in the budget, but I just can't tell you without looking how many students we have.
I know the mill is projected to go down over the next few years. Just I know the document you're thinking of, because we looked at it together on your screen. That the mill is projected to go down, which isn't a great thing, you don't want that. But there's only so many things you can do to effectuate a steady mill. And I mean, we're essentially paying off some debt.
Right.
If you remember the last meeting, that we're retiring some non-referendum debt, which isn't a bad thing. You know, we're retiring a lot of that debt, and we still have some referendum debt sitting there. So there's referendum debt and non-referendum debt that is like good debt, if you will, you know, to look at it, like in a personal housing way, it's be like a mortgage at a decent rate when bonds are callable. But I mean, that's the best way to put it, but we're retiring some this year, which is great. It's actually freeing up $600,000.
Yeah, 700, so it makes 24, 25 look way better than it would if we didn't have $700,000 debt payment falling off.
Yep. Because we're paying things off, we don't have to make those debt payments
Right.
anymore, so 1.7 or $1.8 million of a shortfall is only 1.1 million, which is a lot more doable
Mm-hmm.
in the short term.
So you need a motion?
Yeah, so we'll approve or take action on the school resource officers moving to 3 full-time officers as part of this committee.
Okay, can I get a motion?
I'll motion.
Okay, so I have a first motion to increase school resource officers to 3 full-time officers. Can I get a second?
So I'll second it, but I want you to work with Jason on potentially increasing program revenue to cover some of this. Because I think, you know, if we're saying that the police officers are gonna be more available to the community, and I'm thinking about like the park at North and all the complaints we got, you know, things that aren't necessarily on school ground, like I think we have to talk about revenue generation then and community added rec to help cover at least some of this. That's just my personal feeling.
There's no arguments with that.
So, but I'm in support of 3 school resource officers.
I mean, they were getting $25,000 in additional levy anyway, as they have over and over.
Yeah.
And I brought that up. So.
Yeah.
And I probably wish you'd been on finance before.
It's been about 5 years since I've been on finance, but I'm trying to turn it back on.
There we go.
I already sent the email.
Thank you.
Awesome, thank
So would
you.
that be an amended motion then?
No, cause we
that's
don't,
just-
I just wanna make sure we discuss it, that, you know, that should be part of the discussion. You know, cause we're making shifts, I know we're just moving money, but if it's community focused, then the community should also contribute.
I already sent them an email,
Yes.
I'm sure it'll
When you
follow
talk about
tonight.
football games in the park, like these are all things that are bringing the community together.
That's actually a really good example, that if something starts at the high, or at the middle school, for example, and then it flows into the park, it's no longer really a school issue, it's a
Right.
community issue. So that is actually a better example that I came up with, just based on,
It's off school property.
yeah, it's off-school property, well, the administrators can't go over there and
They
do
can't.
anything, but the police officers certainly can and should,
Mhm.
and it helps.
And the kids are familiar with the school resource officers, they're used to interacting with them, they're trained to work with them, so I think there's a lot of positives.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, so all in favor say aye. All opposed? Okay, it's 3-0. And the last item on the agenda is to adjourn the meeting, can I get a motion?
I'll motion.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned and we can turn on